event, or part of a week of events on Black August. I go by the name 2 Black. I am a poet, artist, organizer, and author here in the city and throughout the country. So I'm just here to present some basic facts, and we're going to get to our keynote of the day, Baye Sylvester, and he's going to be very interactive with y'all. So this is part of part of a week of events on Black August, and I represent the Defense Committee to free the Pendleton 2. We'll get to the Pendleton 2 more specifically later, but in general, the Pendleton 2 is Naeem Trotter and John Ballon Cole. They are 2 political prisoners here in Indiana who were imprisoned in a prison rebellion in 1985 where they tried to save the life of someone, and they were sentenced to 84 and 142 years. No one died, but that's what happened. So we'll get some more details on that, but that's the committee that we represent. So we're trying to bring more awareness about that. And Black August in general is about political resistance. It's about, as we'll get to later, commemorating political prisoners. So this is a good time to lift up that story because we have political prisoners here in Indiana. And for me, when I first heard about that, I was like, it's very important to get out, because a lot of times those of us who are in the kind of world that talks about political prisoners, like maybe Mumia, Jamal, or someone of that nature, has no awareness of those who are actually here in Indiana. It's not the only political prisoners here in Indiana either, but these are the 2 that we're going to be discussing today. All right, so Black August. So what is Black August? It started as a commemoration, and again, I want to highlight this first point. It is a commemoration, not a celebration, and this is very important to recognize because there's a lot of celebratory events on different types of Black subject matters, and that's fine. I'm not knocking that, but this is an ongoing struggle. So we're not celebrating anything, especially when it's an event or when it's a month that is wanting to honor people who are in prison. That's not something to celebrate. But we do want to honor the struggles that those people have engaged in to move us closer towards freedom. All right, so it started, San Quentin commemoration, started 42 years ago in 1979 outside the walls of San Quentin. San Quentin is in California, San Quentin prison. But the events that led to it, we're going to go over those briefly. So on the timeline, in 1970, it started with the assassination of W.L. Nolan, who was 23, Alvin Jugs, and then Cleveland Edwards. They were shot in Soledad prison, another prison in California, in the yard by a correctional officer, by an officer named O.B.G. Miller. They had an altercation with the Aryan Nation. So they were in altercation with the Aryan Nation, and the actual guards shot the prisoners from the roof. And then the prisoners had to get out. The Black prisoners, to be more specific, they didn't shoot the Aryan Nation, of course. So they shot the Black prisoners, so they had to dissipate because they were under attack. This led to a retaliation by, I don't know if that's on the slides. Give me the next slide for me. Yeah, so 4 days later, there was a prison guard that was beaten and thrown off a tier. This was a retaliation. In response, the state charged George Jackson, Fleta Drumgoole, and John Cluchet, who were later known as the Soledad Brothers. Soledad Brothers is just another collective of political prisoners. And they were charged for the retaliation, even though there really wasn't any real evidence on this. So that thrust George Jackson into the international spotlight. And George Jackson has a relationship to a lot of different people. For those who I'm sure have heard of Angela Davis, Angela Davis's FBI case pretty much directly tied to George Jackson. She was on a committee similar to the committee that's presenting this to free George Jackson and the Soledad Brothers from prison. She was on that committee. And the brother of George Jackson, Jonathan Jackson, attempted to break, next slide please, it looks like that might be a lot over, but that's okay. So Jonathan Jackson attempted to actually get George out of prison. He actually planned to take a judge hostage. This was in 1970, I believe. And he didn't actually hurt anybody. He took a few people hostage. including some prisoners at the time who were on trial and a judge. And then the cops showed up and shot. He went into a van, the cops showed up and shot into the van and killed everyone, including the judge. So, now, if anyone knows anything about Attica Rebellion, again, that's the kind of rule that it was at the time. The state didn't want to give any move for any kind of positioning for political prisoners or for any kind of black revolutionaries, so they would even take out their own. Same thing happened in Attica. 39 people were shot in that prison rebellion, and that was not all guards. 39 people were killed, 100 people were injured. 39 people were killed. A lot of those people were guards. Some of them were even media, I believe. And that's its own story. They tortured someone, they put a football under his neck and actually ran him through. It was just a lot of stuff there. So that's the type of stuff that leads to this commemoration. There's other events that have happened in Black August, whether we're talking about the Watts Rebellion, whether we're talking about Nat Turner's Rebellion, whether we're talking about the Haitian Revolution, whether we're talking about the March on Washington. There's birthdays that commemorate like James Baldwin and such. Even here recently, the last 10 years, the Ferguson Rebellion, the Pendleton Uprising, I'm sure more people are aware of that. That started in August as well. So August has a strong, August has a strong connection to Black Revolution. It's something I did want to wrap up on the Angela Davis point. I forgot to clean that up. So Jonathan Jackson, like I said, they killed everyone in the vans. The claim was that those guns were Angela Davis's guns. Then Angela Davis had to go on the run, and she was on the FBI's most wanted list. And this is pretty much what made her infamous, not just famous, but infamous. She's on like a FBI most wanted flyer and such and such. She could have went on death row. So that's kind of what thrust her into the scene. George Jackson is eventually assassinated. They claim he tried to sneak a gun into his afro. If you see a picture of George Jackson, he has like a Kobe Bryant fro. It's not a very big fro. So I don't know how you get a gun in there. And I don't know how you put a gun in your fro and go through cops and all of that somehow. So they claim he tried to sneak a gun in his afro, and then they assassinated him. So honoring that, and then Attica happens a year later, and they were really responding to what happened to George Jackson, and then Black August kind of arises as a commemoration of all of these things and the ongoing struggle of political prisoners, whether we're talking about Mumia Abu-Jamal, whether we're talking about Assata Shakur, whether we're talking about people who had even gotten out but were once locked up. These are people who we're trying to commemorate. And then one last point, political prisoners, in case anyone's not clear on what that means, are people who have been targeted by the state for their political stance and for their political actions. So they're not in prison because they robbed a bank just to rob a bank, or because they didn't pay their taxes or whatever. Like, that's not why they're in prison. They're in prison because they took a line against the state. So they become locked up because of that, usually receive some of the most excessive sentences. So someone like Mumia Abu-Jamal was fighting against police brutality. And if anyone knows anything about the Philadelphia Police Department, as back then and even now, they were very racist, but even worse back then. So he got put on death row. And then you also can become a political prisoner in prison. As in, you can be a prisoner who may have went there for whatever reason, but within the prison cells, you realize this is a terrible environment. There's no ability to really rehabilitate here. They're constantly persecuting us. The conditions are awful. So maybe we should do something about that. And then the guards will usually target you for that as well. Not just the guards, the warden, everyone, captains involved will target you for that. And you can get an extended sentence or something of that nature because of that. So that's how we get to Pendleton 2. Next slide, please. So don't have any slides for Pendleton 2 because I want to give more of that to Baye to speak on, but just a quick overview who the Pendleton 2 are and what the Pendleton 2, like what that represents. Again, here in Indiana, February 1st, 1985, there was a brother by the name of Logmar, also known as Lincoln Love, who was protesting along with other inmates, cleaning supplies and such of that nature. And they were doing the guards at the time were doing these quote unquote like flipping cells or whatever. And they rushed his cell. He was handcuffed and beaten with clubs, damn near to death, tear gassed and such. Dragged him out of the cell, pretty much threatened that this was going to happen to everyone else in the prison as well. Now, this was not a random thing that was just like never happened before and the guards were just in a bad mood. This was regularly occurring behavior at the prison. We now have a deposition by the guard who was actually working there at the time. His name was Michael Richardson, who reported that this was that the guards belonged to was a KKK splinter group, Ku Klux Klan splinter group called the Sons of Light. So the guards in the actual, and this is Pendleton now, back then it was Indiana Reformatory, pretty much is ran by a white supremacist group, Klan group. He even says in his deposition that their kids used to play with their Klan robes, right? So this is who ran the prison. So these are the people who attacked Lincoln Love on this day. So as he's dragged out, Balagoon, again, John C. Cole and Christopher Naeem Trotter, they were not the only ones involved. We actually have someone here who was also there as well. They got the hardest sentences, and they're the ones that still locked up. They and their comrades and the Black Dragons come to rescue Lincoln Love, initially peacefully, trying to see what was going on. Because he was in the captain's office and it was understood that if you were in there, you probably would either get beat to death or severely beaten, almost nearly to death. So they wanted to see what was going on. Then they were attacked by the guards. Melee broke out. The guards had to order to kill them in order to save their lives. After they had already saved Lincoln Love's life, if they not intervened, they probably would have just kept beating him. They took a few guards and others who were in the prison hostage. They rushed into cell house J. They occupied the cell house for about 15 to 16 hours. And they had a series of demands regarding the conditions, food, actual black guards that would be in there because there weren't really any at the time, and so on and so forth. Again, Baye will get into some of this. No one died. You know, they had ample opportunity if that was their actual mission to do that because they had hostages. Nobody died. They called the media. There is documentation that this happened, but it just kind of disappeared from history. And then once again, Trotter and Balagoon received 142 and 84 years, and they spent 20 and 32 years in solitary confinement, respectively. Right? So they're still in prison. Like, this hasn't ended. This isn't like a story that there's a good ending right now. We could create a good ending, but there's not a good ending to it right now, right? So today, again, we're trying to give you an overview of what Black August is, as I just did, but also connected to this struggle. So we have someone with us, Baye Sylvester. That's the man that you see on the flyer, not me. So we're gonna bring Baye up. I do want to read his bio before we bring him up. And then we're gonna get him the mic and it'll be a pretty interactive dialogue. Baye Sylvester is a survivor of long-term imprisonment with Indiana's most oppressive institutions. Born and raised in Chicago during his formative years in Illinois, Baye was an early victim of what is now referred to as, quote, from the schoolyard to the prison yard, end quote. Held captive for over 25 years, his survival and present ability to work in the service of people has roots deep in the soil of revolutionary consciousness. Politicized by the oppressive conditions of confinement, Baye formed an awareness that the path from survival to freedom begins with liberating the mind from the shackles of indoctrination. He presently is serving as a community. He's presently serving his community as a certified recovery specialist / community health worker, as well as being deeply embedded in the service of harm reduction. So give it up for Baye Sylvester.
I want to first and foremost give you all my undivided appreciation for coming out this evening. I know it's not guaranteed when we put on events like this here that we're going to get a crowd, but whenever someone shows up, I'm deeply appreciative of that. They're appreciative of that. The slides that you just saw and Two Blacks iteration of Black August was on point. But I want to expand upon that because Black August has morphed, and it morphed early on, and it wasn't, not just about those individuals behind prison walls who had the courage to stand up against oppression. But what it also does is representative of each and every person who have challenged something that was wrong in their community. Black August is about Emmett Till. Black August is about Fred Hampton. Black August is about the countless children that are missing and everybody who questions those children that's missing or anything that's oppressive in our community. Everything from the dumping of toxic waste in our communities to the underfunding of education to the roadblocks that's put up against us for adequate medical care and so on and so forth. I'm talking about going back. This Black August is about the person, whoever that was, that challenged some slave merchant that came on any parts of Africa and made somebody do something against their will. That's what this is about. It is broad, and it has to begin to reverberate within our souls and what we're about. When you talk about Attica, most people don't understand that the resistance, the history of resistance behind prison walls began on the plantation. And so the examples that they made of individuals on the plantation is the same thing that they're doing today in prisons. And it's been going on. And the tragedy of all this here is that some of the most atrocious things done to our people happens in the juvenile system. In the juvenile system. And I mean, everything from the way they use DCS to strip these black and brown children from their families, and they say that they're supposed to transition them back into their families within 18 months, but it's a big business. You have folks out here who are capitalizing on it. And not only are they taking the children, right now they're demanding that these parents that they took these children from pay child support. And all kinds of stuff. No, we're going to use them, we can't use them on your taxes, all kinds of stuff. But we hear about Black August, and I'm here to talk to you about the resistance movement in this country. The resistance movement in this country is one of the foremost resistant movements in the world. When you think about that this country has hegemony over most other countries when it comes to military might, brainwashing other people. The average person you talk to in this here particular country can't even begin to talk to you about class consciousness. Everything is hung up on race, but they're more apt to look at your skin color than to look at the fact that we got more in common as a class. You got all these folks who ran around calling themselves Trumpites and this and that there, knowing damn well they can't go to Mar-a-Lago. They can't get up in Trump Tower, and they think they got something in common. It's foolishness. The seeds of rebellion. I want to read something to you all real quick. I think it's important that you understand this here. Because I like to move from the general to the particular. Y'all with me? All right then. A rebellion is inherently meaningful. It connotes resistance to authority or control. A riot, by contrast, disturbs an otherwise peaceful society. Behind the walls of the Indiana Reformatory, as it was known in P-Town and other names, there was no peace for those black and brown prisoners in there. He shared with you about the sons of light, about these administrators, because it worked from the top down, who was allowing these guards to openly and with just wantonly abuse folks. And I'm going to tell you something. You cannot continuously to abuse somebody and degrade somebody and they don't do something to you. So we got to understand that there too. So we're talking about this cycle of this diminutiveness. And so in the history of rebellion in this country, all of these incidents, don't no one just wake up on a given day and say, well, hey, we just gonna take over the prison and put ourselves in a position to get our lives taken or get 112 years or 84 more years. That's not how that works. But the dissension in what's going on inside there is that this constant degradation, this constant abuse by those in authority and power. When Attica was going on, they don't talk about it, but the Pendleton riot in 1985, as ugly as it was with regards to what happened to John Cole and Balagoon and Naeem Trotter, little is being said about what happened in 1969 when over 100 black prisoners took their shirts off, got on the yard, demanding humane treatment. Humane treatment. And this guard, the captain had told his guards, and they stood around with their shotguns, if I throw my hat down, shoot him. And it was a peaceful, wasn't nobody taken hostage, wasn't no cell houses being burned up, none of that. But they shot. They killed one and wounded 47. Some people probably, if they still alive, they're walking around with scars right now. And his answer was, I didn't order them to do that. Somebody accidentally knocked my hat off. That's how egregious, how nothingness they felt that these lives were. And so in this country, rebellion is no different behind the walls than when the seeds of discontent explodes in a community. Pressure will bust a pipe. But when we're sentenced to prison, that's the punishment. You have no right because you wear a suit and you have the authority that you are signed on the paper to say, okay, I'm a guard officer, correctional officer at the Indiana State Prison or whatever prison. That don't give me no right to dehumanize you. But that's what's going on. If the conditions are atrocious and I say, hey man, look, it's no hot water in my cell. There's no, the ventilation is crazy, it's smothering in here. And I filed a grievance about these here conditions. And your retort is to attack me and to brutalize me. And if I have any affinity for anybody in this room and I stand here as a human being, I got every right to come to your aid. Every right. But these are the conditions that not only permeated in Indiana Reformatory, it runs rampant throughout the whole DOC. Now you gotta understand this here too. Think about where prisons categorically and historically have been located in rural areas, where if the economy is depressed, you bring a prison in. You bring a prison in. So now there's jobs to come in there and work. The merchants in that area, they have an opportunity to sell goods to the institution. Their egos are inflated. And they knowing now, look, you're a commodity. You're not just a number, you're a commodity for me. And then the advent of the private prison. This prison industrial complex is a parasite on American society. They say that I don't know who said it, but it was written that you can determine the justice of a society by how it treats its least. It's poor, it's in prison, and it's infirm. So in Attica, when Attica was going on, they were demanding the same thing that they were demanding in Pendleton. Cessation of the beatings. They were giving them men down there one roll of tissue a month in Attica. These individuals were having windows were being broken out by guards and stuff, and so and this is upstate New York. It gets cold up there. No, you can't have that blanket. Your punishment for not being this and that there, we're gonna come in there and strip you of your basic necessities. So when these men stood up at Attica, I'm gonna tell you how egregious that the state of New York under Rockefeller was, and Faulkner, the guy Oswald was the DOC commissioner at the time in the state of New York, that they knew. They had separate meetings that, hey, we're gonna listen to them because that's what we want the public to see. Hey, we gave them opportunity. But they knew then, we're gonna take this over and we're gonna kill whoever we got to kill. If those guards in there and they haven't found their way out or talked their way out, then they're gonna die too. They understood that there when they signed up. This is the atmosphere of which was going on in Attica. with men who were infantile in their mental capacities and somehow got pushed through the criminal justice system instead of getting some help, wound up in prison, and because of their mental health situation could not control themselves, were beaten to death, were experimented on. I got some brothers in here right now that was in the DOC with me. The doctor that was at Pendleton that we had to go see was a veterinarian. A veterinarian. And so I'm supposed to trust this. When I'm looking at your arms, I'm seeing insignias of white supremacy. You know, and you know, these are the conditions. Now check this out. You have young men coming from these inner cities who have already been traumatized and led to believe that they don't deserve nothing more than what they see in their community. They don't understand at the time about gentrification. They don't understand what the plan was to bring I-465 through the neighborhood and break down, you know, these type of things. They don't know nothing about this here. They think that their conditions is a result of the people that is near and dear to them. They don't know that these people that are look like them and near and dear to them have only just been trying to survive. So in the midst of that, they come inside the institutions, especially in the last 30 years. So you get these babies that was born in the late 60s and early 70s on the heels of the Black Power movement, on the heels of the Weather Underground and the FALN challenging this government, on the heels of Stop the War and the anti-nuclear when federal government was sending nuns and stuff to prison for saying no nukes. They don't know nothing about this here. And so when they come into this world of being defined solely by the fact that you the descendant of a slave, and though my situation ain't too much better than yours, at least I am who I say I am. And the people who are in control of this multi-billion-dollar industry, they look like me. They look like me, so that means that I'm better than you. And so these are the sordid ideas that we ran into. But these youngsters, they weren't prepared for that. So when they started experiencing vicariously who Jonathan Jackson was, who George Jackson was, when they found out about the fact that when they was in RDC or any other cell house, hey man, your story is my story. This got to be more than a coincidence. And so they start politicizing themselves. And the DOC wasn't ready for it either. In 1977, they changed the Indiana Penal Code from the Burn statute to this determinate sentencing. And young men like myself was coming into the system. You know, I turned 18 in jail. I had 92 years when I got to prison. I ain't killed nobody. I ain't raped nobody. So I asked myself, where's the justice? And I look at these other individuals, where's the justice? And so I say that there to say this here, that for years, this is the reality. So when they come across the news and they say it's been an uprising, they're rioting, that's not a riot. That is a rebellion, and we got to know the difference between that. And so we can move on to 2000, what, I got it right here. In 1986, some of you were still up in the John back there, he was there with me, at the Indiana State Prison. The condition, people would like to think that, oh, up north, you got a sprinkling of black officers and this and that, it's up north, it's better. Let me tell you something. When that cell don't shut, jail is jail. Yeah. And it don't make no difference who's standing on your neck, what it look like. Because the truth of the matter is this here, the same black officers from Michigan City and Gary and South Bend and East Chicago, when they've been talking slick and want to play cards and dominoes with you, when the rebellions jumped off and the captain said, suit up, they were the ones standing in front of you like, get your black ass in there before I kill you. So we got to be clear on this here. Because just because somebody looked like us don't mean that our conditions were different or that they were our friends. Yep. You know, we got to be distinct about that. Many of us are clear. It's not saying that there was no some discussions and just talking, meaning talk, but many of us, we knew who they were. We knew who their allegiance was to. In 1986, we was coming back from the rec unit. And it's about 8:50 in the evening because we got back, we had to lock down at 9 o'clock. One of the sons of this soil right here, Brother Mustafa, better known as Mal Goodman, was attempting to talk to somebody about trying to feed himself or somebody else. And the guard get in his face and talk to him like he had a tail with the finger. Now this brother about what, 6'1", 6'2", broad at the shoulders. He on a walker now, but at that time he'd go. And it all jumped off like that because they thought, you gonna do what I tell you to do. You gonna do it the way I tell you to do it. And don't make no difference if I'm right or wrong. I got this suit on. It wasn't happening like that. And there go another uprising because people were tired. And you had people that had never had a write-up in the history of their incarceration that came forth and said, let me help. Because it was burning inside of them. They were tired of this here. New Mexico, 1980. The same situation. Before Ferguson jumped off, we had never heard of Ferguson. Missouri, if you weren't from Missouri. But it took center stage in our country and captured the minds and the spirit of the people for what? For weeks. For weeks. This thread of discontent runs deep. Runs deep. I'm a member of the African People's Socialist Party, okay? Been a long-standing member. And we have an offset, the African People's Solidarity Committee. You know, and this is a party made up of Europeans, white folks. And so, you know, it used to be a thing whereas in the late 60s and the early 70s, folks would come in and they would say, okay, we with y'all. You know, what can we do? Well, what we need you to do, if you politicize and you understand the plight of what's going on, we don't need you to go down in our hood. We're going to handle this here. Go back and explain to your own what's really going on and that these lives matter, just like your lives matter. And that's the situation. So we move forward to Westville. I think it was 2020, or right around the time of the COVID really started being defined. Now all the nonsense was going on about the China flu, this, that, and the other. People were fearful. The streets were kind of bare and stuff. But behind those walls, there was a whole lot of indifference. They say, according to the CDC and other researchers, that the death rate in the community when this thing was at its height out here was 80 per 100,000. In the institutions across the country, it was 190, close to 200. But what was being said, they feel these people are expendable. They're expendable. And so they started writing, so we want masks. We want some sanitizer. Basic things. It's a pandemic, so you say it is. Some folks call it a pandemic. I leave that up to you all. But the fact of the matter is this here is that without power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. You all heard it. And the fact that if you think that we can trust these individuals that govern these institutions to do right by our sons, our daughters, our cousins, our family members, without us having some insight to it, then we damn fooling ourselves. It's a reason why it's cloaked in obscurity. They don't want you to know what's going on behind them. You know, here's individuals who are stressed out. A lot of these officers, they stressed out, they upset, and then you got that other factor that sons of light that's breathing in some of them ear. Hey, the real problem is these here individuals. You know, this is how you get some rank. You can't show no weakness. We watching you. And that's what Black was talking about when he talked about Richardson. this officer who they had tried to recruit to be a part of them. And somewhere, somehow, somebody must have showed him some compassion, or he understood what ethics and morality meant, because he pushed back. He pushed back. But when it came time for the trial, it was held right there near Elwood, Indiana. We all know about Elwood, Indiana, if we've done any kind of research. And the judge is refusing to recuse people. He's refusing to let in certain evidence, such as the evidence he just spoke about. So where's the justice? The 13th Amendment says in black and white that slavery is outlawed except if a person is what? Duly convicted? Now what is duly? Tell me what that's supposed to mean. It don't say that you got to be justly convicted. It says duly. And so this is the backdrop to why these incidents of rebellions, and they're going to keep cropping up. Because when you know that you don't have where you going to run to? Where you going to run to? And there's many people in there who feel like this here. I'm going to die standing up and not on my knees. Naeem Trotter, 4 months to be released. 4 months. He didn't come to prison on a 20-year, 50-year sentence like some of us. No. He came because of his beliefs. But he only had like 4 months left or less. John Balagoon Cole had a 20-year sentence. He had already served over 7 years of that sentence. Over 7 years. So with this uprising, as they want, whatever they want to call it, they were beating Lincoln Love, Brother Lopemar, stomping him, kicking him in his testicles, beating him with clubs, laughing and giggling about it, and then dragging him across the institution, across the grounds, like he was just like I done shot a damn deer and I'm just dragging it back to the car, taking him to skin it or whatever. These brothers sacrificed. Yeah, they did. They sacrificed and they stood up because they knew that at any given time, that could be me. That could be me. And so when we talk about the history of resistance in this country, it's a long thread of it. This thread goes way back. You know, and so I remember when I first started getting politicized, and I would get the journals and the Guardian and so on and so forth, and I began to know vicariously who was the Weather Underground and all these other European, revolutionaries, the David Gilberts, the Sylvia Burdines and whatnot. You know, these were individuals who stood up and said that this privilege that I got has been unearned, and so I'm giving it back to you because it's false and it's fake and it's not willing. I'm not willing to have it if it's got to be dependent upon me degrading and dehumanizing somebody else, another human being. And so the seeds of resistance, this is still going on now. Right now, behind Pendleton walls, you have shop supervisors who are saying, hey, I can go to classification. We're sending you over to this shop or that shop. You get over, they say, nah, I don't need you. This white person go through there and say, yeah, because his buddies gonna say, hey man, he's one of ours. Now, when you talk about weapons in the joint, that's who got weapons. Because they got access to the means to produce them. And they working in conjunction quite often with these officers. And these officers is stewing this discontent. So during Black August, it's important for us to you don't have to accept anything that I'm saying. You can do this research on your own. I encourage you to do so. But the primary focal point needs to be my humanity, each and every one of us. What does my humanity mean to me? What does it mean? Everyone that we see land in a doorway, everyone we see who may be handcuffed because he's committed a property crime, because he's fell under the weight of addiction, That's system-orientated stuff. Quite often, they are still human beings. They deserve to be treated like human beings. They deserve to be treated like human beings. We all got issues. It ain't so much as who got the damn issue, it's what you're doing about your issue. This prison industrial complex, these brothers that's still behind this wall, we can talk about them, but better yet, we can talk about so many others who were unjustly convicted and have been languishing in there 37, 40 years, 50 years. Come on now. So we have to ask ourselves, if I'm really about humanity and I'm really about uplifting it, then right is right and wrong is wrong. They talk about the state has a supermajority in the state house. That don't absolve you of your responsibility to be just because you got all the numbers. You still have to act according to the needs of the people. But if the people don't say, I'm not in agreement with what you're doing, they'll keep on doing what they're doing. Uhuru. That's a Swahili word that means freedom. When we say uhuru, sasa means now. Uhuru sasa, that's freedom now. These individuals, these brothers that's in here in the joint now, they deserve an opportunity to walk these streets. That's the problem with these communities, because people don't want to accept the fact that it's a short drive from Hallville to Geist to Fishers. My frustration can spill out right there. If I'm hopeless, miserable, lost, it can spill out right there. But more often, it's not spilling out there. More often, it's spilling out against people right in the same neighborhoods that's going through the same thing. And so people like to say, well, that's their problem. And so, if that's the case, then, what is all this here about? It's one thing to say, well, I ain't part of the problem, or I'm not a racist, but is you anti? And if you is you willing to stand up and say so? Are you willing to challenge somebody? Our IDOC watch is not a fledgling. We ain't going nowhere, but forward. This committee to free Naeem and Balagoon, the fact that the numbers may be small right now, we ain't going nowhere but forward. We committed to this here. I remember reading Nelson Mandela, and he said, the struggle is my life and my life belongs to the struggle. If that is so true, each and every one of us in some capacity, because we all have the opportunity to help somebody. And right now, that's what we need. We need to get the word out. We need to tell the truth about this here. We need for these individuals in all these campaigns, we need more than just myself coming down here. I'm from up north, but it don't make no difference. If I had to drive to wherever, I was willing to do it. Because it's wrong for these men that have to still languish in prison for something, a situation. It wasn't a riot. They should be labeled as heroes because they stopped them from killing somebody, caught up in their madness. Prison rebellions, prison resistance, community rebellions, community resistance. The question for me is why? Why? Why are we here today? Are we here just to hear ourselves talk? Are we here so we can learn some more about something that's going on? Are we have fetishes about what goes on beyond, the prison walls? I hope not. We're talking about human beings. This struggle is serious. People don't realize that in the struggle and in New Mexico, there was over 40 men died. Yeah. And every opportunity we get to check an out of control government or an abusive government, we need to do that. Your voice, you don't know who's gonna hear it, and that's what we need to do. Now I want to ask you all something. How many people in here know someone personally that's either been to prison, I mean you know them personally, or that's in prison right now, family or friend? Okay. Okay. So, the rights of prisoners is not secured in laws or institutional policy. The rights of prisoners, don't get it twisted. It's not secured in laws or institutional policies. The rights of prisoners are kept by those who hold the administrators and the guards in check. And that's us out here. That's us. Because, let me tell you something. If the recidivism rate in the state of Indiana is what they say it is, or you see people that's going in and out and they coming out, you know, here's a person say, I've been in prison 5 times. And you don't even have a GED. Is it my fault? But you put me to work in the tag shop. You had me mowing some grass, but uplifting me and giving me something to work with was not of a concern. Then, if it was a business, you would say, well, hey, you know, I want to return this here. I'm talking about billions of dollars going into oppressing folks. So we have to educate ourselves about the realities of what's going on behind prison. And we use this opportunity of Black August because it is very personal to us. Because I know that the Fannie Lou Hamers, the George Jacksons, the so many others, the Fred Hamptons and the Mark Clarks, they weren't talking about just the liberation of Black people. They were talking about destroying imperialism in the colonial relationship. They was talking about tearing the veil off of class so we can understand that we are working class people. And that this system of separation is intentional. It's intentional. I remember being in prison and guys was talking about what's the primary contradiction confronting African people in this country. And everybody probably today would still respond, oh, it's racism. And this one brother, he said, no, it ain't. He said, it's our material relationship with the government. Our material relationship. The fact that they produce everything and got control of everything, and we don't. And this conversation went a little bit further. And he highlighted, he told us, he said, let me tell y'all something about the ruling class. Let me tell y'all something about colonialism. Let me tell you something about international imperialism. International imperialism is hell-bent on staying where they at. And if it means I can bring this 6'2" bearded Black man up in here and put him in a position as president, as long as we still in charge of the means of production and everything else, more power to you. Get on up there. Y'all can clap for him, vote for him 2 times. You know? Y'all know what I'm talking about. But the material conditions down here on the ground, I don't have nothing in common with Barack Obama. I'm not part of his class, other than the fact, you know what I'm saying, we got some African ancestry. That's the reality of what I'm talking about. I got more in common with you all than I got with him, because you sitting here and you understand that there's a need for us to be accountable and to hold one another accountable. And that's what we have to do. So when I was in prison, we ran a thing called the Black Studies class. And well, I used to talk to, especially young brothers, and many of them, you know, like myself, had brushed up against street organizations. The media's gonna say they're gangs. You know, they're street organizations, they organize. And it's indigenous responses when, you know, if I don't feel no hegemony, if I don't feel no love at home, and me and you sharing the same dilemma, I don't care what you look like, then that's my family. You know, but we just say that, you know, hopefully, if nothing else come out of this process of reading and listening to us and trying to transform that colonial criminal mentality, that colonial criminal mentality, the drive-bys that they talk about, these shootings. They showed that junk on Elliot Ness. You know, long before, you know, they were doing it in the hood. That's where you saw it at. And they mimic all this and stuff, these drive-bys and stuff. We were saying, hey, listen, don't go out preying on your community. Because, and we began to break that down and explain it to them. And so there are so many broken individuals right now that's filled inside of these institutions, looking for answers, hoping that somebody will remember them. I remember being in the courtroom. I remember I was 15 years old. They said, well, you being, they're going to weigh me over to adult court. I was 15 years old. I said, what are you talking about? You know, I said, what are you talking about? Oh, don't worry about that. You know, I called home. I said, yeah, they're going to weigh me to adult court. What that mean? I said, I don't know yet. I'm going to find out. And, you know, but this is the thing. Now, I remember being in jail with the little white kid. We was all in the juvenile block at one time. And he had did something very violent to a girl at school. But the dentist was there, the pastor was there, you know, and all these others. But when we go in there, we don't have that kind of, you know. And if we do come, we got crying mothers, begging. We don't have that kind of social capital because we've been pushed out of it. And that's the reality. We got these fallacies, and people are romanticizing the struggle. They're romanticizing what's going on behind these walls. And you got some, I'm thinking that where it's a reunion, but they don't understand. You ain't guaranteed to make it out because the controllers of the gate may not be in part of their intent. In South Carolina in 2018, there was a prisoner who was well known in the institution, always trying to help folks out. Didn't have much of nothing. You know, they worked the farms down in their kind of states, you know, outside. He got caught with some bread. And on the way to taking him, instead of just taking the bread and saying, hey, get on out of here, they took him out and they beat him. And they laughed about it. And there was some other prisoners that said, shit ain't right. And in that instance, it wasn't just no black prisoners, some other prisoners as well. And they got even. They went to try to liberate them, just like these other brothers did. And it morphed. But this is the situation. You've heard of, some of you know, from academia may have heard of the Stanford projects, where they had these everyday people go into the prison house with tries have to close down and take on these roles as guards and stuff. And it wasn't long, just like that. They started dehumanizing and mistreating others. And it was just an experiment. So, prison rebellions. You know, rebellions quite often is the only grievance process that's going to be heard. It shouldn't be that way. We need to not only demand the release of these prisoners, we need to link our arms and our minds together and ask for openness. We need to know who's handling these grieving processes, who's sitting on the parole boards. If they're serving flat sentences and I come out here and I get a technical infraction and they send me back to prison, I come back for a technical infraction. Well, you're denied, we'll see you in 5 years. 5 years on technicalities. There are probably hundreds of thousands of people locked up across the country for technical violations. They ain't committed no new crime. These institutions that we fund as taxpayers, we have a right to know what's going on. Our voice needs to be heard. It needs to be heard. People don't understand that there are many incidents of rebellion. There are many Lokmars in prison. Lincoln Love has been beaten. Y'all understand what a potter's field is, don't you? You know, there's a lot of grave sites outside the prison walls that ain't got nothing but a number on it. You know, oppression, murder is murder to me. If I deny you medical care, I'm killing you intentionally. And so these things is something that we need to pay attention to. We need to wrap our arms around this cause to free these individuals. And before I end, I want to say this here. This brother here, Minka Beck Timber, when we talk about the 1985 riot, as they want to define it, but we know it was a rebellion, then there was demands. They said, okay, we'll sit down, we'll negotiate. The same thing went on in Attica. Oh, we're going to negotiate over these days, you need this. Okay. There was no talk about this persecution and sending these brothers in front of these courts to be charged like this, and none of the guards got charged. And to this day, nobody has been charged. And for other incidents in which malfeasance has taken place, just recently, in recent years, a man at the Indiana State Prison, the cell caught on fire with the electric box. He's hollering and screaming. It took them, I don't know how long, just to come upstairs and see what's happening. And you can see the smoke and the flame jumping out, curling up under the thing. And when it was all said and done, they had to send another prisoner in there to shovel his skin that had melted off his body. You ask your question about why they resisting, why they rebelling, why we ain't resisting, why we not rebelling against them out there. These are tax dollars that they're using to do this with. We need to open our mouths and use our voices, because these operations are hidden, and we should have a right to know what's going on and demand. This brother right here, Minka Beck Timber, he was part of that rebellion. He stood there. Because I'm going to tell you something. Just coming to sit down and negotiate brought about a charge. Just trying to negotiate. I'm glad to see my brother out here. I applaud him for the work that he's doing in trying to save lives and recovery. Every time I see him, I see Ray, I see Lil John, any one of the other brothers that survived, because it wasn't intent for us to come back out. It wasn't. And it wasn't intent for us to come out here and to be standing here and supporting these here causes. We're supposed to be a statistic of a negative. Strung out, diseased, or back in there for harming somebody that ain't did nothing to us, other than being in the wrong place at the wrong time. I could talk all day, but thank you.
Thank you. All right, we're gonna open it up for questions for Baye. So if anybody, I will come to you. Anybody have a question?
Let me say this here. Yeah, we gonna have, anybody got a question, but if anybody got a statement,
That too.
if you want to talk about what you're feeling, what you're thinking, come on with that too.
My name is Kyrie DeLay. I'm about growth and development. So I'll be 45 Saturday. From the riots I'm born in '77. So a lot of my, I say, allies and comrades from the streets were like 45 and up. And the thing you said affected me because of the school curriculum, school I went to, IPS, and things like that. So we made a positive impact on me right now. So, because I'm currently involved dealing with the area brotherhood. I don't call them area, I call them crackers. You know what I'm saying? So I got involved with the Ku Klux Klan here because my last name is DeLay. And they hear that from me. That's the Grand Dragon founder in Greenfield, Indiana, Hancock County. eat crackers, you can tell me that, you know what I'm saying? So, got married to a hunky, you know what I'm saying, a chick. I'm very much like raised to a point where it's like, something's like a uniform. Racism is like uniform. Because I've been like CCA, corporate jails, like Tuck. You know what I'm saying? I knew that, you know what I'm saying? Most of my family are lawyers and things like that. And they wore uniforms in the German schools teaching. So things you saying on Attica, things like that. I'm currently involved online with some things right now. So I'm glad that you showed up. You know what I'm saying? You had no idea, man. Thank you.
Thank you, man.
Anybody?
Yeah, I'd like to add something. Hey, Brother Baye, man, thank you, brother, showing up, articulating that the way you did, brother. You know, to people that don't understand. You know what I mean? You did a great job, brother. I appreciate that. Because I know somebody picked up on something, you know, that they didn't understand. Even my partner right here, I'm sure she did. Somebody had to, you know. Thank you for that, brother. I articulated that.
Yeah, but same thing. I know you know that. I love to see you doing what you're doing. Okay, and I want to add something. For those of you who do not know me, my name is Ray Lady, and I am a formerly homeless, honorably discharged, retired, and disabled United States Marine. And I spent 7 years in prison. And I also live with a severe mental illness. I also am a certified recovery specialist, community health worker. And I realized a long time ago, because I was in some of those black study classes, quite a few of them, as a matter of fact. And I realized, for lack of a better way to put it, the injustice that was going on each and every day. And I realized, I said, man, how can I do this? Yes, and knowing what I know, I would have loved, seriously, to do it a different way. But I realized that if you want to change that beach, you got to change that beach from the inside out. All right? And part of what I do today, I'm a member of 2 state commissions, the Indiana Behavioral Health Commission and Indiana Disability Rights Commission. Yesterday, the executive director, she asked me, do you know anybody who would be willing to go into the prisons and talk with prisoners? Okay, so that we can at least try to change some of that. And I was able to get at least one so far. But I stand here or sit here right now, and I say, if you would like to do that, and it's a paid position, give me your name and number.
Me go back down, brother.
Hey, I just want, before the mic goes any further, I just want to acknowledge one of the survivors and the soldiers of the crew in the Indiana Department of Corrections. That brother back there that just walked in and you all saw come in, that's Brother Mustafa back there. That's Brother Mustafa, Miles Goodner, and I thank you, brother. This is one of when I talked about some of these ones, when I was giving you all the example about C-Cell House, and he said, not tonight. You ain't gonna talk to me in that kind of way, and that SHIT gonna start right here. That's my brother right there. That's an example of courage, an example of resilience, and even when we thought he wasn't listening, he was listening.
Yep.
He was listening. Thank you, brother. Anybody?
Anybody?
Yeah.
Thank you. I really appreciate you doing this, Frank. It opened my eyes to a lot. I used to work at a law firm, and we represented the medical facility that was in prisons. And I didn't stay at that law firm long because the way it was terrible, unprofessional, laughing, it's horrible. But I always struggle because I want to do something, and I'm stuck. But I did come across an article about a young man, his name is Malik Muhammad. He was involved in the protests here in Indianapolis, George Floyd, back in 2020. He actually led a protest. The news showed him ending the protest. he hugged the cop. 4 days later, he met with the governor. But then in September, that happened in June, September he went to Portland. Things got out of control. And he's now in prison for 10 years for throwing for allegedly, throwing a Molotov cocktail, caught a cop on fire. He was a good kid. I mean, maybe, I don't know, but he didn't have a rap. He had a dairy farm in Madison County. It was just crazy. And I'm reading this like, this is wrong. What can I do? So I wrote him a letter. I haven't heard back from him. I just kept it real brief because I've never done that before. And I'm like, tell me your story because this doesn't sound right. It sounds like he's been, it's like he's a political prisoner. So I don't know. Do you have any suggestion?
Well, you initiated the first step, and there is no one way about showing someone solidarity. The humanity that you demonstrated in reaching out to him probably carries more weight than any letter you could have wrote to the governor or anybody else at this particular time. You got to follow that up and try to find out, if there's anything going on locally up there, that you can, be a part of, from this distance and help out. Now, if you all was listening from the beginning, I read a definition, and that definition was about riot and rebellion. What was the riot?
Rebellion.
How did I define the riot?
Resistance by disrupting a peaceful.
And what was the rebellion? Rising up against, unlawful order and stuff. He was there rebelling, and he had a right to rebel against injustice. And so, I'm quite sure, because he's in Portland, you say? Yeah, Portland, there's some organizing going on up in Portland. So I don't know all the particulars of it, but you have to look into that. But, and ask him. He knows what he needs. You can ask him. But I'm asking you right now, that same spirit, that same want to, we need you. John Balagoon Cole needs you. Naeem Trotter needs you. And there's countless others. And that's what I'm saying, we have to recognize that right on this soil, here in Indiana, we got our own politicized and political prisoners that are languishing. And if you want to get involved, cut your teeth right here. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Harold Thompson. I'm a native Mississippian, moved here in 05 after Katrina. And I've heard the homegoings of brothers, sisters, bragging about going back and forth to prison. I've not understood that struggle. I'm not a part of that. I don't understand it. So I appreciate you, my brother, for explaining it a little bit better for me because, like I said, I'm still a country guy. So I didn't understand all of that. During the so-called riots here, I went downtown to see what I could do. And I talked with a business owner and told him, I said, those kids are kids. Instead of them being somebody else's kids, they're our kids walking for justice. Instead of saying, hey, those kids are just about taking stuff. Because that's where I'm from. I'm from that great state where everybody says Mississippi is burning. But you don't know the fire that's in the heart of Mississippi until you meet one of us that actually express it a different way. So I appreciate you, my brother. I really do. I appreciate you. Thank you.
Anyone else?
I have a question. I just want to say thank you know, you can read things. There's so much that comes across. We have access to everything at our fingertips. But like, and you know, you're amazing. You bring things to life. You can touch people in a way that is a gift, and like it moves me to want to do something. And I think you have that power to do that, and this organization is lucky to have you.
Thank you.
Two Black, we got one from the Zoom, if we could get this.
Read it.
I can unmute her. We might be able to hear through the speaker here. Hopefully we don't have feedback or anything. Yeah.
You just let the speaker play by itself.
Okay. Queen, do you have a question? All right.
I just wanted to ask the speaker up there, Mr. Baye, how did you personally survive all those years in Mississippi?
Well, first and foremost, my early developmental years was on the west side of Chicago. The first time I was able to eat breakfast when my mother and father wasn't home was a local chapter of the Black Panther Party. I had a spot and I would go there. My brothers, you know, I would see these posters of Huey P. Newt sitting in the rattan chair and stuff. And so it piqued my interest. But this is very true. I was first accosted by the criminal justice system when I was like about 8 years old, man. And I was taken to the Artie home on Taylor Street on the west side of Chicago. And so, you know, my relationship, when I got to prison, I was always a studious individual, but someone heard me talking. And I was, you know, I still had a lot of street in me. Yeah, what up, man? You know, this and that there. And so this guy said, I don't understand what you're talking about, talk to me. And he said, and his name was Brother Opio, Homer Reed out of Evansville. And there's another son of this soil named Douglas Shackelford that we know as Brother Achebe. And they told me to read something. They said, read this here. So I read this book. They gave me this book by Usini Perkins. And this book was called Home is a Dirty Street. And when I started reading it, I said, hey man, this is my story in this book. This guy talking about me, Byron Ball, Harry Wilson, and the rest of us. We the ones that was busting these windows out, these stories he's telling. This is how I felt because it was in my neighborhood. So that opened me up and I started listening. And then, you know, just listening and then trying to explain things. Like I said, you know, I felt some kind of way. You know, I said, wow, I'm 18 years old, you know, I got 92 years. I ain't, you know, so what's up with this here? And I'm walking around, I'm seeing you all, and I'm hearing y'all stories and stuff, and it just awakened the hunger in me to try to explain things. You know, try to explain things. And I didn't like nobody telling me, oh yeah, you going to work in the carpenter shop. I said, I ain't going to work in no carpenter shop. I ain't come here to work, you know. I was mad, I was upset, you know, about the situation I was in. And so that just, I started reading Lenin, George, all these stories. I studied the Russian Revolution. I studied all these different things because I wanted to get an understanding of, get a world view. Now, a lot of people don't know this here, and I don't talk about this here much, but I was raised, my mother sent me to a Catholic school early on in my life. You know, and so I went all the way through confirmation, giving the name and everything, you know, but I always had questions. And I remember getting hit with this ruler on my knuckles for questions. I wasn't a bad kid, I was curious, you know, and so it was these type of things I started to reflect on. And so when I got there, I just knew that, hey, I had, it was just that energy. I could identify with it. And I remember they had a professor up in the school in the NSB building, and I had to just go in the library one day, broke security, ran upstairs because I wanted to holler at somebody out of place. And it was this saying on the wall. It was written on the wall, and it said, time plus space with a negative concept of the space you occupy equals what? And I was like, what? And I remember, wrote it down, I studied it, looked at it. And so I asked somebody that I knew was in that class. I said, man, why y'all have that on that board? Time plus space with a negative concept of the space you occupy, and then add an equal sign. He said, what you come up with? It was Opio. And I said, I ain't come up with nothing, don't make no sense to me. So he broke it down, he said, time plus space, that's your reality. That's the reality that you're in. And if you have a negative concept of the space you occupy, which is me, that equals a type of insanity. And I was like blown back by that. I ain't insane, what are you talking about? But he said, look, insanity ain't just running across I-45, butt naked, blindfolded. If you doing things that's contrary to the benefit and the uplifting of yourself, you acting you're out of sanity, you know? And so, of course, I didn't buy into it right then. You know, I'm a young man, you know, I'm just like everybody else in the joint, but I thought I was slick, you know? I wasn't all over the joint because I was still, you know, I'm a studious individual, you know? But that's how I survived, getting in those their books. There was times that I wouldn't order no commissary, but I would order from Red Sea Press, you know, or one of them their type of joints and bought me some literature, you know, because that's what pulled me, you know? And I was hell-bent on seeing my mother before she died. I said, I'm gonna get out of here. It took me 26 and a half years, but I got out, you know? And so I was hell-bent on that, and I didn't want to be a part of the problem because it resonated within me. You know, I remember my brother would be having political education classes. I remember listening to a lot of TPM, and I remember listening to Omari and T. Shakur and the rest of them. And so all these old heads in the joint, you know, just like I came into it quicker. Bro, man, he's a warrior. You know, took him a while longer, you know what I'm saying? Because he had that burning fire, you know? So that's where it's at. But right now, today, we got them in the streets, they running around, you know, hearts bigger than this building, but they don't understand. How can you quite understand? When you're 16 and you're 15 years old, you're only 2 or 3 years removed from mama. What they talking about, mama? Do this here go together? So then they get in the courtroom, and they treat it as though they understand everything. And that's the dilemma, you know? And when we go to prison, the first thing we have to suppress is our emotions. That's why so many of us come out here and we have problems adjusting because emotionally we pick up where we left off.
I got nothing.
We got one.
Go ahead. I know, right.
Go ahead.
You just took me back, brother. We've been knowing each other since when?
60 years.
Boarding school.
Yeah,
Boarding
50
school.
years now, yeah.
You know, oh man, you just took me back. But it took me back to what we were talking about earlier. As young people, we were in that street. You know, we were juveniles. We were getting in trouble there. But even though I knew your story about Catholic school too. You told me this. But I was like, damn, what? Right? But you were talking about how, as young people in the neighborhoods, you know, how we're caught up in hurting each other and everything, you know, selling drugs or whatever, shooting each other, or just living in that, you know, that poverty, trying to get somewhere but get nowhere. Can you just kind of elaborate on that a little bit more? I don't know what I'm trying to say.
Well,
you know,
check
process.
this out, man. You have somebody else. I'm gonna make this as brief as possible. In the absence of having a proper role model or somebody sitting you down and telling you, Charles, you a Murphy. And Murphy men do it like this here. We educate ourselves, we work hard, we stand by our family. If we give our word to somebody, that's bond. We honor that there. In the absence of that stuff, then you got little boo-boo, little Frankie, Yeah, what up, man? This and that, that sounds like a good idea too. Now this the blind leading the blind, because we don't know, because we don't have that real understanding of things. And so once you get into it, because you want a sense of purpose. We was young, we wanted to know. When you hear Balagoon's story, he told you, wow, youngsters out in them streets, you know, we didn't know. We missed something. And what it is the destabilization of our environment, of our neighborhoods, of our families. It ain't just when they start coming out with this Section 8 that the brother couldn't be in the house. If you get Section 8, who gonna raise my kids? Who gonna demonstrate to them, you know, what it means, you know? And so they separate these families. And then in our neighborhoods, you know, you see a lot of everything that you see right now. And so we didn't know, so we was in search of that confusion. And confusion by any other name is still confusion. You can call it being slick, having courage, I'm banging, or whatever else. You see what I'm saying? Because we really just was trying to survive and not be a burden. Usually, most of us, we wasn't trying to be a burden on a mother that was trying to care for us. We wanted to hurry up and step out. Oh, I got this, don't worry about me. And so we was out there trying to survive on limited information. And many people right now, you gonna run into the ideas that they conceptualized when they was 12 and 13 years old is still governing. So you got 40 and 50-year-old men being governed by 12 and 13-year-old boys inside here, you know? And so the thing is, how else can you explain when you meet a 45-year-old man, what's up, you know, you say, what's up, Chris? I know you don't call me that, man. You know that, Tippy, man, Tippy. You're 45, you still holding on to Tippy, that's that little boy thing. And so we have to, people always paying attention to us. And believe me, you right now, is somebody somewhere waiting for one of us to screw up. So he's like, I told you so. Only thing they can say about us, oh, he used to do this here. She used to do that. She used to do this. She used to get ass. She used to walk the street. This and that there. Because misery loves company, man. And so, you know, our youngsters, our youth, if any of you ever had the opportunity to read Claude Brown, Man Child in the Promised Land, that book has got to be, what, 45, 50 years old now, but it is so true, it even resonates today. It resonates today because it speaks the truth. These, man, look here, ain't no simple answers to these here questions. But the truth of the matter is this here. We work and we slave sometime all day and we come home and we want to bust a COVID, we want to sit down, we probably want to take our minds off everything. Kid coming out, what's up? Ain't nothing happening, go to his room. What you mean ain't nothing, there's something going on? Been gone all day, talk to me, find out what's happening. But we didn't have, a lot of us didn't have that. And we was mad. We was mad, you know. I was mad, I'm still mad, shit, you know. When my family broke up and my father drove past me with another woman and some kids in the car, ain't that, and didn't pay me no attention? Shit. Yeah. What's the next question?
I think that's it. If Zoom come
We
through.
can get one, yeah.
Okay, we got one more Zoom. We'll take this last question and then we'll have a few closing words and we'll be out of here.
We got you. Wrap it up.
All right, so that is all. Give it up for It was a wonderful, touching speech, lecture, education, all of the above. For those who who want to actually do something, again, this is ongoing. Pendletons who are in Pendleton, or not in Pendleton, but are in prison. So this is an ongoing thing. We have all the literature to sign up for, email list. If you want to write to the governor, write to the prosecutor, all that is there. Lil John's passing out even more information. So if you want to get involved, again, get in contact with people at the table, get in contact with people in here. We can get in touch with you, and you can definitely be part of the campaign in any capacity. If at the very least you just want to share the story, that would be very helpful to just share the story. This was published. This story of Pendleton 2 was published just this week in the Indianapolis Reporter and in the Star. So at the very least, you can share the story, send the article to somebody, that would be great. But more importantly, we want you to help actually join something with groups of people and get involved. We would appreciate that. I want to give a thank you to the library itself. We want to give a thank you to the Center of Black Literature and Culture. This is a very important space to host these kind of things. So definitely want to shout them out. Other than that, thank you for coming out. We hope you have a good rest of the day. Thank you.